Man, I just watched that 50 Cent documentary on Puff Daddy last night, all four episodes. And I gotta say, it's a great documentary, man. It's a really good documentary. Um, just tripping off how messed up that man's life is and was. And I mean, it's a really good documentary, man. Like, really, really good. Just as far as how well done it was. And I understand that 50 Cent did that because, you could call him petty or you could call him vitriolic. He wanted to get revenge. I guess Puff Daddy slept with one of his baby moms and they had a kid together, or one of his ex-girlfriends or something. I don't know, something anyway. Anyway, man, I mean, this whole rap stuff is so played out. It's just like we worship these people, man. You know, we had an entire culture that was just uplifting these dudes for the last 30 years, man. Really? No, longer than that. 40 years, something like that. But nah, like 35 years, something like that. I mean, since like the early 1990s, since NWA came out, our culture has just been worshiping rappers, man. It's insane. And I was there the whole time, and I had all the albums. I mean, I was a little more into underground stuff. I had a specific taste, and I still do, of music that's usually not the mainstream stuff. But I was caught up in it too. I was caught up in the Tupacs and the Biggies and the Puff Daddies. I had their albums, and they influenced us, man. They influenced our whole generation in the 90s, man. They really did. It changed the culture. It really did. It changed the attitude, the culture, the character of people. And I look back on it as a Christian and I just think, man, you know, is evil. It's evil. And Satan's behind it, and he uses these people as tools. And, I'm always interested in psychology and case studies and things like that. I've always been interested in that. I've always been fascinated by, men like Donald Trump or men like Puff Daddy, who are just these mega figures, right? Who are also just extremely evil, extremely talented, but extremely evil, manipulative, and like it shows throughout the whole documentary just how much he employed all these tactics, these manipulation tactics to get into people's heads and to you know arrange his environment to make himself into this king. And it's just crazy. And it's like, yeah, that stuff works. You can employ stuff like that in life. If you read Machiavelli or like the 50 Laws of Power and all this kind of stuff, although I haven't read, I think the 50 Laws of Power is written by 50 Cent, if I'm not mistaken. But I'm talking about the Robert Greene books or whatever, the Laws of Power. I haven't read them because it's like, I just read the Bible, man. I stay out of people's way. And I read the Bible, and I just try to stay as close as I can to God, because I was in the world back in the 90s. I was in that culture where, you had the Master P's and the Puff Daddies and the Eminems and the Snoop Dogs, and they were influencing everybody in my city, to do the wrong things, man, to go party, to get high, to drink, all the negative stuff, man, to dress a certain, dress all thuggy like you were in a gang, and like, think you're a pimp, and stupid stuff, man. And, it just ruined so many lives, I'm sure it did, and nearly ruined mine, honestly. And I saw kids go down, kids who were nice kids, in my neighborhood that we knew. And, I'm white, and I grew up in a pretty white dominated city. Although we had black people, we had gangs and stuff around, and I would go see the gang. I would go play basketball, play flag football and stuff over at the school that I lived next to, and gang members would show up and they'd play basketball and they had their guns and stuff, and it was just like this intriguing thing at the time. At the time, you were like, oh, these guys are tough, and like, that's what you thought. And then, it turns out like somebody got shot in the face at a party on accident because they were showing off a gun and the gun went off and some girl got shot in the face. I think she survived or something. But, you'll hear stories like that. I had friends who started dealing cocaine and they had, semi-automatic guns and stuff, and they were, in and out of jail, in and out of prison, by the time I was in college, and I had friends who were, I knew some kids who were like, I wasn't friends with them, but I was friends with some people who knew them, and they were kind of on the peripheral of our little friend group, and these guys went and robbed banks or something like that after, I moved out of that city, and I had heard, oh yeah, those guys got sent off to federal prison because they robbed banks, and I was just like, dang, like I knew those guys. I wasn't friends with them, but I had been around them, and I talked to them once or twice, and like it's crazy, and it's like they seem like all right guys at the time, but then like all of a sudden they're off to prison, and it's just like, I didn't live in the hardest city. I didn't grow up in a hard city, like Chicago or, Compton or something. But there was elements, around, and it influenced me, and I thought that was the cool thing to be because it was a culture. I thought it was cool to, wear saggy pants and, dress a certain way, and to wear your earring and your bracelets and your necklace. I thought that was cool. Like, I didn't care that I was white. I guess you'd call me a wigger. But to me, it was just a culture, and like, I don't know, you look back on it and you're like, dude, what were we doing? It's like, when you're young, you just do stuff and you don't know what you're doing. You just think it's cool because you're attracted to it, and it's on MTV and it's on BET, and these are the cool people, and look how rich they are, and look how they're so suave, and they sold that to us, man. They sold that to us. They sold us on this lie that like being hood and ghetto was like cool. And they made it cool. They made something that was actually embarrassing into something that was cool. It's like most people from the hood and who are poor, they don't like it. They don't, they're not like, they're trying to get out of it. They're trying to educate themselves. They're trying to make money. They're trying to live better. And then you got these stupid rappers are coming along acting like that's the thing to be. Like, oh yeah, we want to be hood. And I guess you can make the argument that like, maybe they made that more acceptable for people who actually were in those environments. Maybe they had a better time because it was like, hey, you know what, we're actually represented here, maybe. And I think it gave people a sense of pride. It's like, all right, you're poor, like might as well just enjoy your life, or whatever. Maybe it helped in that way, but I don't know, man. I was really into, because I'm just I'm a music type of guy. I'm really into music. My dad played guitar and sang folk songs and sang the blues and things like that. Growing up, I remember him doing that. He was in a band in the 70s, and so I'm just musically inclined. And my mom was a singer in the choir and things like that. So I've always really liked music. It's just something that I've always been into. So I was really into the music aspect of it. I like the lyrics. I like poetry. I'm a poet myself. right? So I would get into like what they were saying. I would really get into that aspect of like, oh, they said this, and I really enjoyed the lyrics and the bars and things like that. But as I got older and I became a Christian and I really started to follow my conscience and really started to learn right from wrong, from a biblical standpoint, I realized just how sick a lot of it is, and it sounds good. It's really just a Pied Piper. It sounds really good, so you follow it, and you're not realizing that just because something sounds good doesn't mean that it is good. Doesn't mean that it's righteous. And it's neurolinguistic programming. I learned later on that like music is it's a tool to brainwash people. And I learned there's this really good website. I'll never remember what it is, but it's this website that's explaining all these like diseases and like sins and certain things and what causes certain things. It talks about like frequencies. It talks about like a lot of health. I'll never remember what the site's called. I'm still, looking for it myself. It's something called like Biblical Diseases Explained or something like that. You can try to Google it, but it's this all-inclusive website that really just totally exposes a lot of stuff. And what it was talking about was like neurolinguistic programming. It was talking about how like in music, the chorus, like the timing of the chorus and the words and then the frequency that the music is played on is it's like a brainwashing tool. And you listen to it enough, it will, cause you to start acting a certain way. It will cause you to start accepting the messages, you accept it subconsciously, and you don't realize that you're being programmed. You're just like, oh yeah, this is such a cool. And for me, it was like what I liked was the beat. I like the cool beat, the instrumental. I liked the lyrics, what they were saying as far as like how they were putting words together. And then I liked the way the rapper sounded, like his voice, his cadence and his voice. And I could really, for me, it was like a soulful thing. Like I need to be able to groove to it. I need to be able to move to it, and like I could feel it in my soul, So for me, it was similar to like, and I've just always been attracted to black music, like blues, jazz, and, like old, like Aretha Franklin type stuff, Nat King Cole, even reggae. I love Bob Marley. I just like the kind of soul that they have in their music. I'm not all that attracted to a lot of white. Although I like Bob Dylan a little bit, I like Bob Dylan a lot, but I like, I don't know. I can sometimes, as I get older, I've been getting into like country a little bit, or like trying to dabble in it a little bit, some John Denver or some Willie Nelson, or, some stuff like that. But it's all right, it has its it has its context, but, yeah, mostly just black music, man. And, I don't know, my mom, I mean, I'm fully white, but I got a half black brother. My mom, her first husband was black. And so she grew up around black. She actually went to high school with Jimi Hendrix. She didn't know him, but she saw him around town, things like that. He was a couple grades older than her in Seattle over there at Garfield High School, which also Bruce Lee went to that high school too. She never actually saw Bruce Lee because he was like 5 years older than her. So he graduated before she was on the scene. But, yeah, man, it's just kind of passed down, and it's something I've always got into, and I was just heavy into it. And it was like, I look back and I'm just like, dang, well, it influenced me so much. And I've always wondered what my life would be like if I didn't get into it. There's like two things that I got into. I got into rap music and I got into basketball. And it was, I don't know, I just thought it was cool. It was at that time in the mid 90s, it was like black was cool. It was cool to be black at that time. It was cool to be thuggy and hardcore. Like Tupac made it cool. Like Michael Jordan made basketball cool. You know, I actually really like football and baseball a little, you know, to some degree, lesser than football. But I don't even watch basketball anymore. Like as I got older, I just kind of snapped out of that trance and I was like, yeah, man, I don't even watch. Tennis is actually cool. Swimming, diving is cool, you know. But I got into basketball and I got into rap because that was like the cool thing. You know, you had Allen Iverson come out and he was like fusing rap hip hop culture with basketball, and like basketball was good back then in the 90s. Like Michael Jordan's era, it was good. Like it was competitive. They played defense. Now it's like it's so boring. After like 2012, after the Mavericks won in 2012, I don't even watch that crap anymore. I'm not a LeBron fan. I've never been a LeBron fan. Yeah, I thought he was cool his first couple seasons, but I thought he was pretty amazing. But after that, I just didn't like his character. Didn't like him as a player anymore. And I didn't like what the league became. And now, you know, I don't like it at all. Like it's not even entertaining to me at all. I don't watch it at all. I watch football. I usually just watch highlights because watching sports can take up so much of your time. So I just watch the highlights, which I like a lot. But yeah, man, that documentary is crazy, man. Like that is a malignant man, you know, that's a malignant narcissist right there. And it's evil, and it's crazy to think like I think Satan chooses people, man. That's what I think. I think the devil chooses people, you know. I think he picks people to carry out certain things and to do. You know, this is an evil world, man. It really is an evil world, and you got to be careful as a Christian. You know, out here, you got to be careful who you associate with, what you do, what you say, what you put, you know, what you listen to, what you watch, because it's so influential, man. The world is so influential, you know. And so when I watch something like the Diddy documentary, and I don't even watch movies anymore, because they're just all just gross, and like it's not, you know, back in the 80s and 90s, they used to make good movies, man. They used to make movies that were like, you know, had a real good moral purpose, or, you know, they were just really good stories, you know, and now it's just like, I don't even know what's going on. I mean, every once in a while they'll put out a good movie, but I just don't. I'm not looking for it anymore. I'm not, and I don't think anybody is anymore. I think that genre is dead. I think Hollywood's dying. I think music is dying, and good. I think it should die. Like I'm trying to get back into books. You know, I used to read books when I was a kid, a lot, and I still enjoy reading. I'm trying to get back into books, man, to some extent. But I just read the Bible. I just stay out of the people's way. Stay out of the world. You know, and I just read the Bible. But watching that documentary is just reminding me of like the 90s and like what I was doing, trying to be cool, trying to be part of my little clique, you know, and thinking we were hard, thinking we were cool, and we were just kind of like the popular kids or whatever, trying to be the popular kids, but we were just like poor kids, you know, but we were still cool, and we dressed cool, you know, and we were funny, and people liked us, and so we became like kind of the popular kids. But we were actually poor kids who really just, we had good mothers, and that was kind of the thing, is like we came from homes that were, even though they were broken in the sense that our parents either were divorced or separated, because I had a little friend group of about 6 kids that I hung out with, and we were all the same, except for like one of them had both parents, you know, but we were all kind of into the same thing. We all liked rap music. We were all into like sports and basketball and stuff, and we liked to dress cool, and we liked to like party kind of thing, and that's all it really was, is like we just like to hang out and party, and we were fun kids, and we were chasing girls, and like that's all. And so we were just we kind of became the popular kids, and we started partying and stuff, but that developed into, you know, doing drugs and drinking, and then eventually like some of those kids just totally went the wrong way, and like You know, it wasn't about having fun anymore. Then it was, at some point it was about committing crimes, and at some point it was about like dealing drugs and things like that. And then at that point it was just like, well, we're not who we used to be, man. You know, and something influenced us. And what was it? It's like, what were we doing? We were listening to this music. You know, it wasn't the movies, it was the music. You know, and I learned later on that like it was on purpose. They put out this evil music on purpose. I read, I think it was like 2012, 2010, around that time, I read this website. It's called The Secret Meeting That Changed Hip Hop Forever. And it just blew my mind. I was like, that makes total sense. Because I remember, like, I started listening to rap in like 1993, around there. But I remember rap used to be like, before that time, it was like, there was fun in it. It was like party stuff, and some of it was like conscious rap and things like that. And then, which sucks and sad, but because that was right when I started listening to rap, was like right when it changed. And then when I was starting to like discover like, well, who are these artists, and like, and then I first discovered like Bone Thugs and Harmony, you know. And I remember it had this skull on it too. There, I think it was the album Creeping on a Come Up or whatever. I think that was one of their first. It was like their first studio album or first official album with like Ruthless Records, Eazy-E, and that's what made it cool. Was like they were co-signed by Eazy-E, and I think he was on he was in the pictures of their album cover or whatever. And I remember I saved up for like a week to be able to afford that album, and I went and bought it, and it was just disgusting. Like looking back on it, it's like disgusting. But when I was listening to it, it was cool because it sounded good, you know, and it was like, it's the thuggish, ruggish bone, and it was like cool, and you wanted to, you were like, oh, this is cool, it's dangerous, it's got a little dangerous edge to it, and it's just like, man, you know, looking back, I'm like, God, I would have never given that to my kid, you know, and my mom didn't want me having that. I hid that from my mom, you know, and you know, it was just, you know, it was influential, man. I started to like try to find black kids that I could hang out with because I thought they were cool, and I thought gangs were cool, you know, because it was like glorifying it, you know. And it's like, and when you're a kid, you can't really see through it. You don't understand that like this is real, you know. Gangs are real life. They're playing around with something that's dangerous, you know. And luckily there wasn't really any. There was some gangs, but I was too, like, they were older than me, and they weren't like a bunch of black kids. Actually, most of them were white kids, but they claimed, you know, that they claimed Crip, you know. But they were actually all white kids, so I couldn't even say that. But they were a gang, you know. They had guns, and they were bad kids, you know. But it wasn't like the Compton gangs or whatever, you know. I live in Washington State, you know, and the city that I lived in was actually a nice little city, thank God. You know, it wasn't like there were some harder cities that I could have grown up in that could have turned out bad if I was in the wrong environment. But I'm so thankful that I'm not that type of person, and I tried to be that type of person for years, and I've always thought, and a lot of it tied into like being poor, and my dad left, and growing up not being able to afford anything. So I related with the message that they were saying. I related with a lot of the content. I was like, these guys are like me, you know. And like, it was like this weird thing where like, yeah, you have some things in common, but it's not the same thing, because your city isn't as bad as their city, and your neighborhood isn't as bad as their neighborhood. So even though you're poor, right, it's nuance. And when you're young, you don't understand those nuances. You just think like, well, I want to be like them because this is what makes them cool, because they have these clothes and they talk this certain way. And it's like, yeah, but that's not who you really are, you know. Like, you know. But anyway, it's I guess at best it just resonated with my soul. At worst, it was something that influenced me to do the wrong things. You know, it influenced me to try to get into like stealing, and I did, and I eventually got caught, and you know, had to do these programs, and like I got caught like 3 or 4 times stealing stuff. I used to steal like little stuff like baseball cards, and I got caught for stealing wallets one time, and at the mall, and I tried to steal a belt and a wallet or something, and I got caught for that. Um, I think my dad had to like pay a fine or something, and then I had to do these like classes or something, and I got spanked. My dad's whipped me, and then I did it again like a couple years later. Or I kind of went straight for a little while, and then I kind of got back into it, and then I got caught. I think it was like something stupid like football cards or something I was stealing, and I had to do a whole program. I think I got locked in juvie, or I went to juvie. I didn't actually get officially charged and put in juvie, but I was like in the holding place or whatever, and that's when they got my name and stuff. And then the kid I was with, his brother came and picked us up, so we went to juvie technically, but I didn't stay there. It was just stealing like football cards, so it wasn't anything big, but yeah, man, that's when I realized, like, yeah, I'm probably not a good criminal. I'm not, and I wasn't thinking that way anyways. I wasn't like, yeah, I didn't know how to, I wasn't like trying to sell drugs, or I didn't know anybody who had drugs to front me to even sell. So it's like, looking back, it's like, yeah, that's not who I was. I'm not a little thug. I'm actually a good, decent Christian kid. But the problem is my parents had a dysfunctional family, and that caused a lot of pain. And because I had that pain, I didn't have a lot of direction in my life. I didn't have a lot of I didn't have a proper father figure because he was dysfunctional and my parents were dysfunctional. And so I just had to kind of figure it out on my own. But I wasn't the kind of kid, it wasn't, my situation wasn't so bad where it's like I got to go fight kids as I leave outside. I got to go join a gang or else somebody's going to kill me because I need that gang protection. It wasn't anything like that. It was just my parents were dysfunctional, and I lived in a good neighborhood in a good city. I'm so thankful for that. At my age now, looking back, I'm so thankful for that because it saved me. It saved my life, really. And it's like, that's everything. That's why family is so important. That's why marriage is so important. That's why, living in a good area, a good neighborhood, having good laws and good teachers and good environment is so important, because you can just easily go the wrong way. You can just easily end up in a gang or end up in jail or dead, or and it's just like, and even if you don't, right, you still can those things can still happen to you. But it's just because you got to be careful what you say, you got to be careful what you do. I mean, that's life in general. But I'm just saying all that to say it wasn't hard for me, but I was influenced by the rap. I got these albums. I remember looking at Snoop Doggy Dogg, Doggy Style album, Dr. Dre's The Chronic. And this was back when these things first came out. I remember looking at that stuff and like listening and like, oh wow, it had a huge impact on me. It was so influential, And then I put it together as I got older. I was like, yeah, this is just evil. This is just evil influence. It's just Satan behind these people, But I didn't know when you're a kid, you don't know, like, you don't even really understand that the world's evil. You might have some understanding that there's evil out there, but you don't know like how insidious it actually is. You don't know that, like, well, these things are influential. They damage you if you listen to them. They warp your thinking. It's why kids shouldn't look at pornography. It's why pornography is evil, because like it warps you. It warps your understanding of what a relationship really is. It's just damaging. and the world is getting darker. If you listen to the music out there now, it's so horrible, and porn is it's everywhere. And yeah, you look at these young people, and you listen to what they say, and you listen to what they're doing, and you look at what they're doing, and it's disgusting. And they're just having all this random sex, and they're getting STDs, and they're getting pregnant, and they're having abortions, and they can't figure out what gender they are, and they're just acceptable of all this degenerate, immoral crap. And it's like, gosh, how far we've fallen as a society. How far we've fallen, And they think it's okay because it feels good, right? Oh, drugs feel good, so it's okay. Oh, sex feels good, so it's okay. Like, they're just living for pleasure, and they don't understand that, like, yeah, it feels good now, but in 5 years, it's going to take your soul. In 5 years, you're not going to have any ability to love somebody. You're going to be very damaged. Your body's going to be broken down, and you're going to be, I mean, if you do hard drugs and you drink, your body's going to, and that's what a lot of these people do when they go out and they sleep around. They're out there getting high and drinking and going to the bar and things like that. And it's like, that's what they got to do. And they're doing harder drugs too than that. And then that's what it's the influence, and that's what Diddy was doing. That's what Puff Daddy ended up doing, right? For a long time he was sober. Apparently at some point, well, I think he probably drank, but at some point he started to get into harder drugs, pills and ecstasy and things like that. And eventually it just takes your soul, and you become a monster. And I guess the documentary points him out as always being a monster. I mean, it runs in his blood. I guess his dad was a gangster or whatever, and it is what it is. And these gangsters, they have to use violence, and they have to use intimidation, and they have to use all these tactics to be successful in that line of work. And he employed those tactics into the rap music, and my gosh, what an eye-opening documentary. But as a Christian at my age, and I look back on it, I just think, man, the devil's real. That's all. The devil's real, and he's influential. And yeah, you might enjoy the music, you might bob your head. And what's interesting is that the devil, who's Satan, called Satan, which means adversary, he used to be Lucifer, whose name means light bearer, meaning he was the top angel in heaven. And he was also the choir director, meaning he was like a music producer in heaven, literally. So isn't that interesting that Sean Combs became the biggest music producer in the world around the mid 1990s, and that carried over until until his arrest. I mean, he was uber famous since like the mid 1990s until he got arrested, and he became more famous after he got arrested or whatever. So it's insane, man, that the devil uses music. He uses music, man. And music can be something that really glorifies God. Music can be something that really helps people. It can be something that really conveys a positive, loving message. God can use music, but so can the devil. And it seems like the devil's used music a lot more than God. I don't know. I don't know who's used it more, but anyway, I can just make the assessment that that's what that is. It's an evil empire, and it's something that really Diddy was actually he was, believe it or not, he was a major player, but he made the John Gotti mistake, right? And what was John Gotti's mistake? His mistake was he was too flamboyant. He was too out in the public. He liked the fame, right? Whereas most of the other gangsters and mobsters, they like to be in the shadows. They didn't want they like to be hidden. You know, they didn't want their deeds to be out. You know, they didn't want anybody to know who they were. But John Gotti was flossing, and he was flamboyant, and he was, you know, out in the public eye, and he was wearing these expensive coats, driving these expensive cars. So he wanted to be a superstar. He wanted to be like an actor. He wanted to be like that. And so that's what, you know, that's what Puff Daddy did. He took that same concept, but at the same time, he was doing some real evil, messed up stuff behind the scenes. And yeah, man, it's a trip. It's a trip to watch something like that, you know. And I don't know, man. Life is a trip. Life is a trip because you look at all societies and you look at cultures, and there's always some kind of evil influence, you know. There's always some kind of, whether it's war or whether it's some messed up culture, or whether it's, you know, drugs or certain types of perversion, sex and whatever. And there's always this underbelly of sin, really. And I don't know, man. The best you can do in life is just to lay low. You know, the best thing you can do in life is just to be under the radar and be out of the way, stay out of people's way, you know, and just live your life and enjoy your life, you know, to the best of your ability. For me, you know, I got to pursue God. You know, I need God, man. Some people need drugs, some people need sex, and, you know, whatever. I need God because, you know, it's, you know, some people don't need God. Some people are just all right, you know, or whatever, you know. I mean, I don't know if they're going to be all right on Judgment Day, but, you know, I'm a dysfunctional person. You know, my life has been dysfunctional my whole life, really, since I was a child, because I grew up in dysfunction. So I've always been dysfunctional in one way or another. You know, I never had stability. I never had good parents who were, I mean, my mother was very loving, and she's a saint. You know, she's very spiritual. She's a very godly woman. But she had a lot of faults. She had big faults, you know. And my dad was a churchgoer and a believer, but he had a lot of faults, and their faults combined, they were like gasoline and matches, you know. They were like a lit match and gasoline. That's what their mix was, and they fought a lot, man. So I remember being under duress since a child. So for me, my whole life is dysfunctional. So I can't exist without God. You know, I can't, if I don't read a Bible verse, if I don't pray, if I don't turn my heart to my Savior, I'm not going to have a good day. You know, it's just not going to work. I can't make it without God. Let me put it that way. I can't make it without God. So that's my life. But I've seen a lot, man. I've seen a lot of people go down. I've seen a lot of people go up. I've seen a lot of people, and you see it in celebrities, you see it in friends, you see it in, you know, a lot of life is just survival, you know, just hanging on, man, hanging on to what you got. You know, the grass is not always greener. Believe you me, the grass is not always greener. You know, I've seen people get addicted to drugs. I've seen people just become alcoholics. I've seen people, you know, turn their back on their friends, cheat on their boyfriend or girlfriend, get divorced. I've seen a lot of divorces. I've seen a lot of, hateful thinking, dysfunctional behavior, And I could just say, man, the best thing you can do is just hold on to something. If you got something good, hold on to it, man. If you got a good life or good family or good environment, hold on to it. Don't go. It's just like that song, "Don't Go Chasing Waterfalls" by TLC, right? That's a good song. I always like that song. Don't go chasing waterfalls. Just stick to the rivers and the lakes that you're used to. I mean, there's kind of a little message in there, and it's a good song, It's like, it's true. It's like, yeah, man, if you got something good, there's some people who are just dealt really crappy hands in life. They just dealt a really crappy hand, and they got to fight their way out of it. Some people just gotta fight to survive. Their whole life is a fight. But then other people, they just kind of got it good. They got a nice little house, nice little home, nice family. Man, if you got that, just count your blessings and thank God, and just, don't drink, don't smoke, don't get high. It'll mess your life up, man, for real. I remember as a kid, people saying that, and it really will, man. I've seen it. Even even weed is not good, man. It'll mess your life up. Just that's why I say, really, for me, the ultimate thing is just to love God, man. But if not, if you're not a Christian, whatever, at least be moral, At least be moral. That's what I say. Try to do the right thing. Don't treat people bad. Don't mouth off to anybody. Don't go to bars. Seriously, don't put yourself in any situations where people could harm you. Don't go chasing women, because you do stupid stuff when you're trying to get laid, you're chasing sex. You do really stupid stuff. You really do. You do stupid stuff. You'll sacrifice your morals. You'll actually risk your life. Honestly, you risk your life doing just trying to get sex. Like, it's a safeguard, man. So I say, it's best to get married. It's best to but these days, good luck finding somebody, right? That's the problem, is you can't find somebody. That's why you got to pray. And I'm still searching myself, I guess. I'm still looking myself, but man, it's a weird thing, being at my age, because now I'm coming into middle age, getting older, and I think our generation, millennials, we really took a long time to mature. We really did. We took a long, long time to mature. That's what I think. We're just a very childish generation. I think we're just a very, maybe sheltered generation is a good way to put it. Even though, I've seen a lot of stuff, we were still sheltered. It's weird. We just didn't mature in the same way that older generations did. I don't think we had the same realities that they did, in a way. It probably has a lot to do with just the fact that television is a big one, movies and dreams and things. I think because we lived I think the pinnacle of all humanity, all civilization ever in all history, I think the pinnacle, as far as, wealth and GDP, gross domestic product, country safety, no wars, or at least minimal wars. I think the pinnacle was probably like 1980 to like 2010, maybe. Even though 9/11 happened, it was still this small little war that was kind of fringe. It wasn't like the Vietnam War. It wasn't as bad as the Vietnam War. At least it didn't hit our country as bad as the Vietnam War, I should say. I don't, because there was a draft in the Vietnam War. I don't think there was a draft there was no draft in the Middle East wars. I guess they didn't need it, but no, it hit. A lot of people went and died in Vietnam that didn't want to be in Vietnam. So that's why it hit people. That's why it hit our country harder, I think, because it was so serious, because there was a draft. But it wasn't like that with the Iraq War or whatever, the Middle East War. But yeah, I would say it totally peaked, I would say 1980 to 2010, and then it's been just a downhill ever since. It's been a decline, and I think we're starting to see a real big decline here. And the decline is not in the way that you might think. We're not becoming like a third world necessarily. We're becoming hateful. We're becoming disjointed. We're becoming more divided now than ever. Politics has made a lot of people stupid, although I think people are sort of starting to get smart, and they're starting to realize, yeah, our government's corrupt. Yeah, no one's going to come save us. But the problem is now is that people are blaming, and they're trying to look for, people are solution oriented. They're looking for what the problem is. And they're starting to see that our country's ruled by these deeper, forces behind the scenes. And so, and that's going to come to a head at a certain point. It was better when people had the illusion that the government actually was really in their interest and things like that. It was better. That's why I say 80s to 2010s, it was the pinnacle. And really, I'd say the 1950s to the 1960s to the 2010s was the pinnacle. But the money wasn't quite there until the 1980s, and that's when consumerism and materialism really started to ramp up, and people started to have better products, and they started to have more convenient, easier things and things like that. But in my opinion, I think the most ideal time was the 1950s and 60s. I mean, they started to have inventions back then too, but it wasn't like what we saw in the 90s and 2000s till today. It's like amazing stuff. I was born in the 80s, and I just remember it was still kind of like the 50s and the 60s in a lot of ways. It was there, and my dad was like he loved the 60s era, and he was a car guy, and he was old school kind of guy, hard worker, and so we kind of lived a minimal, and we were poor, obviously, right? So, but we lived a minimalist lifestyle, but we had love, we had family, and we'd play board games together, and we'd watch shows sometimes together, and we'd eat popcorn together, we'd go swimming together, and we'd play these little sports and these little things together, and you would do stuff together with your family, and there was this nostalgia in that. There was this love in that. It's where you didn't need the things that people need today. You didn't need all the money to go out and spend $1,000 at a restaurant. You didn't need that back then because you had love, and love was far more valuable than all that jazz. You didn't need to go on a vacation because your family was close, and you'd bake cookies together. You'd make a gingerbread house together, or you'd go for a bike ride together. You go for walks and things like that. And it was, yeah, and people were, when you rely on family, you're on other people's time, and they're on your time, and you're stressed and they're stressed. It's hard to get that aligned a lot of times, but some people were very good at it. Some people become experts at it. Some people, you can do wonderful things if you have a strong, loving family. I've seen it, and sometimes families work together, and they make businesses, and they make money, and then they make their lives really nice. You can do that in today's day and age, or just in general. You always could do that, but the problem is that people are so selfish, and people are disjointed, and they're divided, and they're angry at each other, and they hold grudges and all this stuff that separates people and divides people. And I've been through it. I've lost family over arguments and fights, and I've held grudges myself, and you got to forgive, but then sometimes people aren't Sometimes your family members aren't worthy of your time. Sometimes your family members aren't, they don't act right. They don't treat you right, Um, so really, at my age now, I don't really have anybody. I mean, I've got, my mom and my sister, and I got my brothers. My dad passed away, some years back, but I don't have a lot of friends. I don't have a lot of great relationships. Um, I just roll solo. I'm just with God. I just walk with God. We live in a dark world, man. We live in an evil world, and I would say the best thing in life is family. I would say that. I would say the best thing in life is to know your purpose as far as what you're created for, why you're here, where you're going after you die, what life is all about, and all those answers can be found in the Bible. I've searched around, I've thought about it, I've considered other concepts, I've considered what if God is not real and all this stuff, and my ultimate conclusion is that I have experienced God. God has taken care of me, and God has been there when I've been through turmoils, and I've been through the worst of the worst scenarios and the worst situations, and I still go through bad situations. I live through bad situations still. I suffer a lot. I've suffered a lot in my life. I've been through things that would blow people's minds, you know, and even things that were funny and stupid and dangerous at the time that you look back on and you're like, man, that was actually a lot more dangerous than I thought, or that was actually really crazy that happened, and I survived, or that was, and you don't even think of it at the time. But then I've been through other things that are like super suffering, super horrible things that have happened, you know, and it's too many to mention. I'm not even going to get into it. Just take my word for it, or don't, or whatever. But yeah, man, and I say all that to say that God is real, man, and yeah, we're judged, we're going to be judged for how we live this life and how we treat people, and we shouldn't sin, and that's the whole message of the Bible, or that's a big message in the Bible, is that you shouldn't sin. You should stop sinning, walk away from sin, and because it's harmful, because it will come back and get you. It will come back, and I think this generation is a generation that is very sinful and that really doesn't have any conscience or feeling about the sins that they do. They don't think twice about it, you know. And that's why a lot of men my age, we envy, or we have this fantasy, and we envy the 1950s and the 1960s. I've talked about that a lot in my videos on my channel. Just about how ideal it was. A man could go out and didn't even have to have a college degree, and he could find a great paying job, and he could get a 2-bedroom house, or a 4-bedroom house, even with a 2-car garage, and raise a big old family. And he didn't even have to have a college degree, and he could just go do that. And that's why that generation, the boomer generation, the kids born after the Second World War, which ended, I think, in 1948 or 46, something like that, if I'm not mistaken. But those kids who were born in that generation, they had it good. They could just go out and get a real nice job and start a family and have kids tomorrow, and get married, and the wife was good, and she was moral, and she didn't have a high body count, and she was raised right. And now, look, I'm not saying they didn't have their problems or their proclivities or their perversions, because they certainly did, because that's human history, right? Everybody does, and everybody did. And you're going to have detractors who are saying, oh no, that they were all on drugs and they were abusive and all this, that, and the third. It's like, maybe some of them, but I just don't think so. I don't think they all were. I think that's a stupid argument. I think it was a very idyllic time. I think the 1950s to, I'd say, up until the 1990s even, but the 70s were wild and the 80s were wild too. But it was still, if you were a good person and you wanted to have a family, you could really, really do it up until about the 90s, and then it started to get messed up. It started to go bad in the 70s, but it really didn't culturally take hold until like late 80s, 90s. And then it was like, okay, there's something going on here where like women are just not what they used to be. And I remember growing up in the 90s, it was like they were playing games in the 90s. There was still a lot of them were still really looking for love, but at some point like they weren't even looking for love anymore. I think around the 2010s, or I'd say the 2000s to the 2010s, etc., is when they really fell off and they stopped looking for love, and they were just like, yeah, let's hook up, and let's. And now it's like normal. It's like, yeah, sex on the first date, or women they're just trying to grift, and they're trying to get everything they can. They want it all. They want the money. They want the influence. They want men to lust after them, and I mean, it's gotten so bad that it's almost corrected itself. If that makes sense. Like, it's gotten so bad that even women are like, women suck. It's gotten so bad that people don't even believe it anymore. They don't even believe in feminism anymore. I think the pendulum's starting to swing back. For a lot of people, but I hope so. But I don't know, man. I mean, I don't know. Hopefully, we're starting to see how corrupt politics is, and there's no hope for politics. At least maybe we can get a president that's not a complete malignant narcissist. I viewed Trump and Sean Combs as very similar personalities. They're very similar. Very, very similar. Very, very similar. Although it's hard to say which one's more dangerous. It's hard to say which one's more evil. Honestly, they're very similar people. It's really bizarre. And these are the people that our country chose to be the leading representatives. I mean, Sean Combs was the leading representative of the youth culture, pop culture, music culture. He was the guy. Okay. I mean, there was other guys, but he was one of them. He was one of the main ones. And particularly if we're talking hip hop culture, I mean, it doesn't get much bigger than I don't think anybody's bigger than Sean Combs as far as influential hip hop. You could argue the Jay-Z's and the Eminems. You could argue maybe even 50 Cent, but not really. No, you know, you could argue. The only one that really comes close is Jay-Z. I mean, and I don't like any of their music. I don't even like 50 Cent's music. I don't listen to none of that stuff. I like underground stuff, but underground in the sense that it's not mainstream, but where I liked, I don't even like listening to rap music anymore. I just like listening to instrumentals. I like jazz music. I like jazz instrumentals, relaxing music. I listen to lo-fi hip hop instrumentals because they're just relaxing, and I'm just all about peace, man. I'm not trying to listen to nothing that's negative. I might throw something on if I'm exercising or lifting weights because it kind of gets me pumped up or something. But for the most part, like I don't even like putting that stuff in my mind because it's influential. It influences you, and it's negative, and it's got this negative energy. And like I said, there's these frequencies and neurolinguistic programming. Anyway, I'm not to keep preaching about that, but yeah, man, it's a trip. It's a real trip. And I would just say the ultimate, like, you enjoy your life to the best of your ability, enjoy your family to the best of your ability, lay low, just stay out of trouble, pay your bills, and yeah, we're living in the Matrix, right? Yeah, it's all crappy, and life is hard. Yeah, okay. And yeah, people who run the world are evil. That's true. Yeah, all right. But if you lay low, for me, I just believe in God, read the Bible, and it's hard. It's hard. Even it's hard to stay on that road. The Bible says narrow is the path that leads to life. Narrow is the gate and the path that leads to life, and few are those who find it. It's hard to be a Christian. It's hard to walk on the straight and narrow. It really is hard. And even if it's hard, life is hard in general. Even if you just lay low, you don't want everything. You don't want to sin, or you don't want to be evil. Or, it's hard. But for me, like I gotta have Christ. I gotta have Jesus. I gotta have the Bible. It's just I can't survive without it, man. Honestly, and I got my sins. I got my problems. You know, in the sense that, you know, I'm tempted a lot of times. It's tempting, like, oh, you know, maybe I'll just go find a girl, or I'll just go hook up, or, you know, or maybe I'll go just smoke a little weed, or maybe I'll just, you know, you know, go get high. You know, I'll just go smoke some weed or something. You know, it's like, you know, been there, done that. You know, smoked a lot of weed, had a lot of girlfriends. It's always, it always ends in the same way. You know, you damage your body. You know, you waste your time. You don't get anything accomplished. You know, you got a girl that you don't really love. You know, that the sex might be really good, but you don't like her. She's not a respectable person, or she doesn't really love you. And it's like, and then at a certain point, you can start getting attached to her, and you start bonding with her, and you start, you know, you kind of start loving her because you're just with her, and then this magical thing happens that when you got a girlfriend, you just bond, right? And because that's what's supposed to happen, but you're bonding with this girl that you don't actually have anything in common with, because it was a hookup, and it was a friends with benefits, or you lied to get her. You know, you pretended like you wanted to be her boyfriend so you could hook up with her, or vice versa. She lied, you know, because usually both people are lying, because women want sex just like men, so they're pretending like they want a boyfriend too, and you're pretending like you want a girlfriend, and or maybe you do want a girlfriend. You know, maybe you do want a girlfriend, but she's all you can get. You don't really like her, but she's all you can get. And it's the same with her. She doesn't really like you that much, but you know, you're the best that she could get. And it's just, ugh. You know, you get to a point and you're just like, I don't want to pretend anymore, and she doesn't want to pretend anymore. And, you know, and it's not that you got a bad relationship. It's just that she's the wrong person. You know, she's the wrong person. She doesn't really love you, and you don't really love her, and it's evident. It's evident because she cheated on you, or you cheated on her, or you dumped her, or she found somebody else, and she monkey branched off onto somebody else, and you weren't so lucky because you're a guy, and it's hard for guys to find a replacement. It might take you a year, or you might be single for 5 years, and you're just thinking about her because she was your last one, and it's like, it's just miserable, man. And then you got to worry about STDs. You got to worry about her, you know, getting her pregnant. You got to worry that she's cheating on you or not, and she worries that you're cheating on her, because everybody's cheating on everybody. Honestly, it's just how it is. And then, you know, and then you're out there and you're like, God, I want to find somebody who I really love, but you can't because they're all hoes and they're all messed up, and it's just like, man. You know, so I say don't do that, man. Don't don't go look for a girlfriend. Don't go try to hook up with girls. It's just dumb. It's just a waste. It's a waste of your time. It's so risky, and it's like very minimal returns, you know. Risk versus reward is all out of whack. It's more risky than what you're getting out of it. You know, very, very, very diminishing returns, honestly, for how much effort you put in. And then you work out, and you learn how to like be social, and you spend all this time, you know, you spend all this time frickin' trying to figure out how to be more attractive to girls, and most of it is just natural anyways. Either you are or you aren't a good looking guy. You know, you can make yourself a little better looking by exercising and getting your body weight down, and, you know, dressed in a certain way. It can help a lot, but ultimately it's like, you know, it is what it is, you know. And Because the truth is you're supposed to find someone naturally that you're attracted to and attracted to you when you're young, because that's when you're the most attractive, is when you're young. You're the most attractive when you're 21. That's when you're most attractive. And that's when you should find somebody right out of college and get married, and have kids and grow old together. But you got to have values, and you got to have. But the problem is we're raising kids who aren't mature even at 30, right? So what's the problem? The problem is it's a parenting problem, and it's a society problem. It's a culture problem. Like, why are we not growing up by the time we're 30? It's because a lot of kids aren't enjoying their childhood. And school is to blame for that a lot. Schools are kind of screwed up, although I'm thankful I had a lot of good teachers. But there's a lack of love in the community. There's a lack of love in school. There's a lack of care and proper, teaching and proper a lack of proper role models. Kids are growing up in divorced households. Kids are growing up with their parents hate each other, and that just ruins you. When you don't have, I didn't, like I said, I had a dysfunctional family, but we had some love and we had some moments, and so I was able to experience those moments. So I know what those are because I've experienced them, but they weren't all the time. It was they would happen, but it wasn't that much. It was like, it was once in a while. And so I got to see what those were. So I know what it is. It's just that I could have been experiencing those things every day. I could have been experiencing that love and that family, every day. And like that changes you. It causes you to, I don't know, there's a safeguard in that. But if you're coming from dysfunction, you'll look for love elsewhere. You look for love in a movie or music, or you look for role models in these places, and then there's very few. There's really not. There's not that much out there. And you got to piece together what you can. I grew up on Clint Eastwood. I grew up on I don't know, Arnold Schwarzenegger movies. It's like that was my idea of what masculinity was. Was being this tough macho guy, and I kind of transferred that into sports and things, and I was very active, and that helped a lot. It helped me from sitting around being depressed. You don't want to sit around being depressed, as a kid, but my dad was into cars and fixing cars and things like that, and I never liked it that much. I wouldn't pick up that hobby. I like to read, and anyway, a lot of that stuff doesn't really translate into real life that much. I don't know, I think reading helped me a lot because I was able to idealize certain things. I was able to learn about what having fun looked like on paper, and in a book, and what friendships and adventure and things looked like in a book. So I was able to fantasize a lot, I guess. And I had my own little adventures. We would go do stuff, and I would go outside and run around, and there'd be some bullies in the neighborhood and certain things, and I go skateboarding or biking, ride my bike and stuff. So I had some ideal stuff, but it wasn't like what it could have been, and it wasn't until I got older where I realized, like, yeah, some kids had really good childhoods where they had a lot of friends and their parents loved them, and they rode bikes and stuff, and they had a very loving family, and they had structure, and they would eat together, dinner and things like that, and they would they loved each other. They would kiss each other goodnight and things like that. And I kind of did that stuff a little bit, but not much. Because my parents were fighting. Our parents were dysfunctional, and so I don't know, man. I say all that to say that, yeah, the world is messed up. It's an evil world, but we can find love, and we can find, We can find God. We can find love in God, and we can find healing in God. And so many people just go out and you don't realize it. You don't realize that, like, yeah, they just started smoking cigarettes, and then went from cigarettes to weed, and then went from weed to something harder, and from something harder to something even harder than that, and then you realize these people are dead all of a sudden. They overdosed, or they their lives are horrible. They're homeless, or they're it's like we don't think about that. I've had friends from high school who died. Couple of them overdosed. You know, kids that I knew, that I was in class with, that I was good friends with. I've been to their houses. I've hung out with them. They just died. You know, like I said, I knew kids who went to jail, who did major crimes and things like that. Kids who, weren't bad kids inherently. They weren't just evil kids. It's hard to say. Is somebody just born evil? I don't necessarily. I mean, maybe some people, but I think a lot of it's just environment. It's poverty. It's a lot of it's choices. A lot of it's bad. You make bad choices sometimes. And your influence. There's evil influence to get you to do bad things. Or there's just some person in your life who's an evil influence on you, and they come along and it's a bad relationship. Watch who you have around you, man. That's why the Bible says, do not be unequally yoked with unbelievers. Watch who you have around you. And I think to some extent it's a safeguard to kind of be a loser, and to some extent it's like you don't have the pressures of, like, you don't have the normal pressures of life, which is like, oh, I got to make this money so I can get this woman, so I can keep my wife. A lot of men are just trying to keep their wives happy by buying them off, giving them gifts and taking them on trips, and they call that quote unquote romance, right? Yeah, I mean, you're kind of a hamster on a wheel. Like, I don't want my relationship to be like that, So it's a safeguard. And then when nobody wants to hang out with you, when you're kind of a loser and you don't have money, it's like you're safeguarded. Nobody's saying, hey, yeah, come get drunk with me, or hey, yeah, come to this party, where, something bad could happen, or, it's just like, you used to think, oh gosh, I'm such a loser, nobody's inviting me to parties. It's like, good. Now you can really enjoy your life and not have to worry about what other people think, and not have to, like, be around super shallow, vapid, judgmental, materialistic people who are just really just misled, and they're kind of evil themselves. Okay, oh, they're good looking. So, like, that's just, Sean Combs and all these people he had around him were all good looking, and everything was on the up and up, and it was all good until he started drugging people, right? It was all good until he was doing some real deviant stuff, and that's what these people do. He's just one of many. There's people who really are just evil, and they're out there doing evil crap, and it saves you when you're kind of a loser. It saves you from that. It's like, yeah, okay, cool. I'm a loser, but I'm alive. I'm a loser, but I don't have these problems. I'm not wanted by the law. I'm not, I don't have baby moms who are hitting me up for money. I don't have all these problems that these people have. It's like Biggie. It's like what he said. Mo money, mo problems. It's true. It really is true. The more money you got, the more problems. Because now all of a sudden you got all these fake people around you. Now all of a sudden you got these hangers on who are trying to. And I've been in that a little bit. That's what my friend group turned out to be after a while. It was kind of like that. It was like, oh, you want to be friends with us. You got to be cool. You got to wear the coolest shoes. And at a certain point, I was like, I realized, like, it's more powerful to just be alone. I'm not trying to worry about what everybody else is doing. I'm not trying to worry about how cool I am. I'm not trying to impress you people. Like, dude, I am what I am, man. I'm thankful for what I got. I got socks on my feet. I got clean clothes. Like, thank God for that. I'm not trying to be, and it's like guys are out here, doing everything for women. They're out here watching these masculine content, how to be an alpha male, how to groom yourself to where you can be acceptable by a woman, and how to, it's like, all right, yeah, it's good to groom yourself, but come on, like, they're just so obsessed with this, how they look, and, you know, they really care so much what other people think. And it's like, I think you're sacrificing your self-esteem when you do that. I think you're sacrificing your life when you do that. Don't sit around worried about what other people think about you, man. Just live your life and enjoy your life, because it's fast. Life is fast, man. And before you know it, 10 years are gone. Before you know it, 20 years are gone. And you're like, dang, I would spend all that time trying to, really a lot of it's just anxiety. Like the Bible says, is like God wants to restore the years the locusts have eaten. The years the locusts have eaten. And what does that mean? It means that the devil wants to waste our time. He wants us thinking about all our deficiencies. He wants us thinking about, what we don't have, and my life is so crappy. How can I improve my life? And at a certain point, you realize I'm not even enjoying myself. I'm not even happy. I don't have any joy. I don't have any. Or worse, you're just spending all your time working, or spending all your time and energy trying to make money, and then you just live for money, and then you realize, like, maybe you do get money 10, 20 years down the road, but you don't have anything to show for that 10 years. I guess what you have to show is you got your money, but you got to put your life on hold, and they tell you to do that. They're like, oh yeah, go put your life on hold, go sacrifice for 20 years. And it's like, well, you don't know what's going to happen in 10 years. You could be sick in 10 years. You don't know what's going to happen in 10 years. The world could end in 10 years. There could be a world war, and you get drafted. You worked all hard to get your dream, your farm, or your yacht, or your boat, or your summer house, your lake house. Everybody's got their dreams, And some people achieve it. Some people get the lake house. Some people get the boat, maybe. But what do you got to sacrifice to get there? I don't know. Maybe it's worth it. Maybe it's you enjoy it. I don't know. But my point is maybe stop and smell the flowers. Maybe enjoy your moments while you got them, if you can. Some people work jobs that they hate just because of the money, because it makes them live somewhat of the type of lifestyle that they want. But they hate their jobs, and they hate their life for 8 hours every day, and then they come to this other life that maybe they can enjoy. And some people turn to drugs and alcohol because of that, or some people are so poor that and they take whatever job they can get, and they're so tired, all they can do is survive. All they can do is, they're just living paycheck to paycheck. They're living to pay their rent. And what kind of life is that? You're a slave. You're a total slave. You're a total slave. Like, you have no energy. You come home, you have no energy to even work out because you worked 8 hours, some hard job or some job that you hate, so it's tedious and it drains your energy, or it's stressful or whatever, and then you just come home and all you can do is sleep. I've seen a lot of people like that. And they don't even have relationships. They're just single, and a lot of men like that. There's a lot of men like that. There's a lot of women like that too. Seriously, and it's really sad, man. This life is just so sad for so many people. It's really messed up, man. And then other people are like, no, not me. I'm gonna be different. I'm gonna do this and do that, and then you fail, or you're unsuccessful, and then you think you're a loser because you're not rich like this person. And that's just what the devil does. The devil goes, hey, look at this person, because he wants to make you feel like crap, because he wants to make you depressed, and hopefully maybe even like you don't want to live anymore or something, because you see all these other people who are like enjoying, like, oh look, why aren't you like Leonardo DiCaprio on his yacht? Why aren't you like this sports ball player, this famous athlete, look how great they are, and what's their life advice? Well, you got to work hard, and every day you got to be on the grind. And so you think that's all I got to do is be on the grind, but you don't realize that it takes talent, luck, certain situations, or maybe the devil just makes some people successful. He just arranges and uses his power to make people like Sean Combs successful. Because that's what the Bible says. When he was in the wilderness, the desert or whatever, tempting Jesus, he said, I will give you all the kingdoms of the world because they're under my power, and I give power to whomever I will to be successful and to run these civilizations or whatever, these kingdoms that I own. And he's talking about all the kingdoms of the world, Greece, Italy, Rome, uh, you know Africa, all these places. He owns those places. The devil illegitimately runs the world, according to the Bible. If you believe it or not, whatever, But so yeah, he can make some people successful, and then it makes you feel like you're nothing. And this is why you idolize celebrities, and you look up to these stars, and oh, I want to be like Tom Brady. Oh, I want to be like Michael Jordan. Oh, I want to be like this, and such and such actors, such and such actors. And it's for men and women. It's for men and women. It's the same thing. It's different, right? Men usually talent and accomplishments and charisma and confidence, and for women it's like sexuality. For women it's like, I gotta have the nicest body. I'm the prettiest, so I'm the queen because I'm the prettiest. That's how sick the culture is, right? It's not about character for women. It's just about looks and arrogance, really. They call it confidence, but it's arrogance, really. you know I don't know, man. It's a wicked world, bro. It's a wicked world. That's why I just, when I was 20, I had my fill of it, and I just said, you know what, I need to turn to God. I need to turn to God, and it hasn't been easy. It's been a rocky road, and I've backslidden, and I've failed, and I've been very sinful in certain seasons of my life, and haven't it hasn't been great. I met wrong people, and I got influenced by the wrong things. Even in my 20s, after I became a Christian, I had problems, from dysfunction, and when I was a kid, and things that I never got, such as I never had much confidence, and so I met certain people who gave me confidence, and I never had girls really. I mean, I always had girlfriends, but I never really was enjoying them like I wanted to. So I met some people who I thought were going to help me do that, and they kind of did, because they gave me some certain confidence, and they gave me certain ways of, being around them. I learned, a lot of how to like move, how to be confident and things like that. And but really the end of it was just pain. you know Dated some girls who were just messed up, and just for the sex, and oh man, and it's folly, man. It's sin, and you look back, and you're just, in hindsight's 2020. Hindsight's 2020. But when you're living it, you're caught up in your pain, or you're caught up in, you justify it. You're like, oh well, my life's crappy anyways, or it's, you don't realize that these are precious moments of your life. These are and I guess they just have to become lessons, right? And catalyst for growth, right? But when you're doing it, it's like you're hurt, and you're just acting out of emotion, and you can spend years like that. And this is why people end up messed up. That's why their lives end up messed up. It's so important to have good family and good upbringing, and have good character, good morals, and it's like crucial. You need all these things to but ultimately you need Christ. Ultimately we need God, because we don't have these things, and we need guidance, and we need His mercy, and we need to pray every day. But you know, I've known so many people who just became drug addicts, you know, and who are having to put their life back together. You know, so some of them died from it, you know, but some of them are. I know some who are, thank God, putting their life back together, but they're doing it at 50. You know, that's this generation. That's my generation. These millennials. You know, we're getting to be we're middle aged now. We got taken over. We're not Gen X. We're not Gen Z or Gen Y or whatever. We're millennials. That's my generation, and we're getting into middle age, and so I'm starting to see people falling off and dying, and you know, having to put their life back together at 40 and 50, and you know, and it's like, it ain't fun, man. It ain't right. By that age, you should have kids who are taking care of you, and but it's like, where's the good women at? Where's the women who aren't gold diggers? Where's the women who don't view love as transactional? You know, how much money do you make? Da, 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 da. You know, it's like, I've been, you know, barking up that tree for almost 15 years now. Since I really got hurt and took the red pill, you know. But anyways, man, I appreciate y'all listening. If you listen this far, you're golden, you know. You're a G. Thank you. I guess it's just all part of maturity. It's all a part of realizing that, you know, there's certain things in life that are really important, and there's some things that are not that important, you know, and the things that are not that important, unfortunately, a lot of times you get caught up in. The most important thing is enjoying your life in a safe way, in a righteous way, in an honest way, in a lowly way, in a, you know, way that you're not bothering anybody, you know, in a way that you're just, you know, and it's who you really are, being authentic, living your authentic self, you know. Staying away from sin, staying away from temptations, staying away from all those negative things that can bring people down, you know. So really, I just look at that. I think it's a triumph, man. That documentary, because it really, really just totally shows how you shouldn't go down the wrong road, and you shouldn't do things wrong, because there's consequences, and there's, it just shows that and people live this fake life, you know. People are living this fake life where, like, oh, celebrities, and oh, it's all about success, and that's a fake life, man. These people are fake. You know, he was not a good person. He's not a moral person. He's not a good character. You know, he might pray. He comes from a Catholic background. He might, I mean, they've got God somewhere in there, but really he was used by the devil. And he was very evil. You know, and he became, I believe at certain points, he was just the personification of the devil. He was the personification of evil. But he was one of many. You know, there's many that are elites. We call them elites, you know. These extremely wealthy people who are just so perverse and so degenerate, you know, and that's Satan's playground, you know. And they run the world, you know, and unfortunately they're the ones who are the movers and the shakers. They got all the money, and they do all this crap, and there's a lot of evil stuff, man, that goes on, and we're getting into a place here where not only are we seeing it, not only is it's blatant, it's right in our face because people are exposing it, but it's starting to get so bad that it, you know, I don't know, man. It's blatant. It's almost blatant, you know. It's very blatant at this point. But yeah, I mean, I don't know, you know, back then listening to that rap music, it was like, you know, I think we knew it was evil in a way. I think part of us knew it was wrong, but there was just something that was so attractive about it. It was cool, you know. It was hip. It was it was what people were uplifting, you know. And you gotta watch out for that, man. You gotta watch out for that pop culture stuff, man, because you get caught up in it. Because a lot of it is just the world. It's just the devil, and the devil's behind the world, you know. Read the Bible, man. The Bible has all the answers. It really does. You know, it tells you to stay away from wicked women. It tells you to stay away from seeking the love of money and to get rich. It tells you to just walk with God. It tells you to put your trust and your care in God, that his yoke is easy and his burden is light, you know, and he cares for you, cares for your soul. And that's me to a T, man. Like I don't want nothing anymore, man. I don't want nothing anymore. I don't want to pursue this stupid materialism anymore. You know, I did for so many years, man. Wanting to be rich or wanting to be famous, wanting to be an athlete, I wanted to be an NBA, and then I wanted to be a rapper for a while, and I wanted to, you know, a lot of it was just about money, like, you know, not that I cared that much about being a rapper, but it's like, I thought, oh, maybe I could make some money doing this or something, and none of it ever worked, man. I wasn't talented enough, wasn't good enough, and just, you know, pretty average guy, you know, and it's like, I mean, I think, you know, I had some things were better than, you know, some things, I'm a little bit smarter than a lot of people. I'm a little bit more aware of certain things. I'm a little bit more insightful than the people, which I think is really one of the things that has kept me from, you know, really going down the wrong roads in a lot of ways. But I don't know, man. Honestly, it's been God and prayer. My mom prayed for me a lot, you know, and I've been in a lot of bad situations. It could have went really bad, but God was there. I think. I mean, I don't think I know. I know God was there. Uh, you know, and even with Sean Combs, it's like I think God. You know, he talks about God, and you know, it's like, yeah, you know, God cares for people. God cares for evil people too. You know, as messed up as it sounds, but there's consequences. There's consequences for evil, you know, and he's gonna pay for it in this life or the next. I'm not saying he's going to hell, because, you know, once saved, always saved. If you're genuinely born again, you're not going to hell, but you're gonna pay for it. You're gonna pay for things you did. You know, you absolutely will, whether it's in this life or the next life. And I've paid. You know, the Bible says you reap what you sow, man. You reap what you sow, for real, and it's for real. It's for real. You really do. You know, probably a lot of my life, a lot of why I haven't been blessed in a lot of ways, is because of a lot of evil stuff that I did. You know, I mean, you know, partying, drinking. I was mean to my mom in the sense that I didn't respect her, and sometimes, you know, when she'd try to argue with me and I'd cuss her out or something, and I'd leave and go party or whatever, you know, just dysfunction, you know. And but that shit it comes back to you. It you know, you reap what you sow. You reap what you sow. You can't go party and drink and think you're a gangster, think you're a thug, and, you know, think you're cool. You know, it's gonna have a consequence, man, one way or the other. And I'm lucky it wasn't as bad. You know, for me it was just kind of I lost my place because I was partying too much, and I couldn't play basketball and be popular anymore because I was just too out of it. You know, the alcohol and getting high and stuff, it just took me out. And then what happened was my friends stopped hanging out with me. They stopped thinking I was cool, and I was like, oh, I get it. So you guys just thought I was cool because of how successful I was. And now that I'm not successful, now that I'm basically a dropout my senior year, now you're kind of looking at me sideways. Now you're like, oh, I don't really want to hang out with you anymore. Oh, okay. I see how close this friendship really is. I see how much you guys really love me and care about me. Okay. And then I skipped out and I moved to a different city. Went and lived with my brothers in a different city and tried to turn my life around. Tried to get off drugs and alcohol, and I did. And it was good for a long time, and found God and just decided to go solo. And it's been a good change. It's been a. I'd rather be solo than have a bunch of fake friends who only like me because I'm sinning with them, you know. And that's basically what it was. That's what I saw in that documentary. It's just people who go party, people who are, oh yeah, we're all about success and da 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 da. It's just a bunch of fakeness. Because if you take away the success, take away the good looks, take away the money, the cool clothes, the cars, none of those people are good people. They're not moral. They don't really. They're not loyal. They don't have anybody's backs. They're all backstabbers. They all hate each other deep down. It's just the only thing that unites them is the sin. That's all that unites them. They're not really loyal. That's why you should never join a gang because they're not really loyal. It's the illusion of loyalty. If you go to jail, probably nobody will visit you. If you're, it's that's what I learned. It's all fake. There's a Bible verse that says there's no honor amongst thieves. There's no honor amongst thieves, man. And a lot of it's a replacement for family, you know. You don't have good family growing up, so you replace it with a gang or whatever, and it's just I don't know, man. The best thing is real family, like, have kids and treat them well and love them so they'll love you as you get older and they'll take care of you when you get older and they won't just drop you off at a nursing home and go party, which is what a lot of kids of our generation do. Why? Because their parents are probably crappy and they probably just partied all the time. That ain't no life. Oh, I'll just party because it feels good. And it's like, okay, well, it might for a while, but accept the toll that the drugs and alcohol are going to have on your body and your brain. By the time you're 60, you're probably going to have dementia. Seriously. A lot of these kids out here, these people out here, they're probably not even going to make it to 50. Doing lean and ecstasy and, there's people, I dated girls who did ecstasy and when they were in their early 20s, and I look at them now and they just look horrible. They're overweight and they just look bad. Of course, their diets aren't good and they don't exercise, but it comes back to you reap what you sow, man. And I think our generation, we're going to be seeing that a lot, is like just a lot of people with no families, a lot of people with no kids, just really disjointed, dysfunctional, dying at 50 because they did so many drugs. If they're lucky, a lot of them, if they're lucky, they'll make it to 50. My dad was an alcoholic for 40 years and he died at 61, which is really early age to die. Hopefully you make it to 75, 80, and if you really eat right and take care of yourself, then you'll be doing good in your 70s. There's people in their 70s who are doing real well because you preserve yourself, you preserve your body, you preserve your mind. And I don't know if it's going to last that long because of all the evil stuff going on in the world. I think we're going to see Armageddon here pretty soon, but you never know. It might be another 100 years. I doubt it. I doubt it's going to be another 5. I think 2030 is when it's all going to end. That's my guess. That's my vision that I see, just how bad the stuff's going. But it might not. We might get lucky. Who knows? Not to say that the ending of this world would be such a bad thing because so much evil in this world. Maybe it's best that God comes back, honestly. And many people are praying for that. Many people are praying that God would come back, and just end all this. I've always felt that I really wanted to be happy for at least maybe a decade of my life, and I never really had it. I never really had happiness. I never really had prolonged. I mean, I glanced at it. I'd experience it once in a while, where like, oh, I'm really happy today, or I'm really happy this week, or I had a really good week, or I would have that sometimes growing up, and sometimes as an adult, I would, I've had happiness, but it's always fleeting, and I've just wanted something where like I had something stable and consistent. I've always wanted a family. I've always wanted a wife. And as I get older, it's funny, but as I get older, I want kids a little bit more, which is a little strange. I don't know why that is, but when I was younger, I didn't want kids at all. I didn't want kids when I was younger. Not that I wanted to go live my life per se. It's just that it just seemed like such a burden, and I still think it is. It's absolutely a burden. But you understand. I think what I didn't understand when I was younger that I understand now is that there's a love. It's a suffering and it's a burden, but there's a love in there. But I mean, I don't think it'll happen because I just couldn't do it. I couldn't do it financially, and I couldn't do it physically now. But I understand it. It's like in the ideal world, if you had a good money and you had a good home and you lived in a really nice neighborhood and you met a really nice, sweet, pure girl who really loved you and really knew how to treat you right, man, that'd be a good life. If you could just, if you could just find that. If you could just find that little bit of happiness, it would be a good life. And I think that that's what people really, really deep down want, but they don't think they'll ever get it. And I think they're right. I think they know that they won't ever get it, and I think they're correct. They won't ever get it because, there's just so much against it. Financially, people can't do it. Society's so messed up. Culture, there's no morals. It's just too much. Just too messed up. But I've seen glimpses of it. Where I've been in certain neighborhoods or I've been around certain people, and I'm like, man, I know those people are living good. Like, I know they're happy, or at least they got a really good environment. I'll say that, certain neighborhoods you'll go into and you're like, yeah, this is really good, And that's kind of my ideal for my life. That's kind of what I want, It's like, man, I just want to settle down in this really nice, quiet neighborhood and just really enjoy the seasons as they pass, really go for walks and go out in the sun and enjoy the wind and the rain like I used to. And I can't do it in this city, I tell you that. It really matters what city you live in. Some people just get really good cities. Some people don't even know that exists. They might see it in movies, or they might not even know what it feels like. I at least glimpsed what it feels like. Anyway, yeah, that's my dream. To meet a nice girl who's cute and sweet and loves me, and she's not demanding, and she's just pleasant, and she doesn't have mood swings, she's not moody, and she just really cares about me, and we just have this nice little house, this nice little home, nice house, not an apartment. I live in an apartment my whole life. I hate it. Nice house with a decent little backyard and a tree or two in the backyard, and there's trees in the neighborhood, and you can just got a nice living room where I look out. I look out the window and I see this nice kids playing in the neighborhood, or there's snow outside. It's just ideal, and it used to be like that. I think people used to have that. in some places, that's what it was all about, and they had it right, man. They had it right. They really did. They had it right. That's what it is all about, you know. But sin comes in, and the world, and evil, and you get caught up, and then you're chasing the highs, and you're chasing the success, and you're chasing the this and the that, and then you realize I'm unhappy as hell, right? You realize you're unhappy, and you're like, what is this? Why am I in this matrix? How do I get out of this place? And, it's a vision. You need a vision, but you also need a savior. We need this. We need our Neo. We need somebody to unplug us. We don't need more motivational videos, right? We need to be plucked out of the fire, plucked out of the world. We need salvation, and it starts in our mentality first of all, and then it's a spiritual salvation as well. Because that's a lot of what this is all about. This matrix is it's a spiritual warfare, warring against the soul, warring against our spirit, to keep us down, to keep us occupied, to keep us depressed and dejected, and unhealthy and sick, and all these things that we got to battle. It's a battle to be healthy. It's a battle to be healthy in your mentality. It's a battle to be educated. It's a battle to be moral. It's a battle to be to have a good character. It's a battle not to get sucked into temptation. It's a battle not to go with the current flow of society and what everybody else is doing. It's a battle, man. It's a battle not to sin, man. Not to get caught up in sin. It's a battle to put God first, to really love God and really follow God. And it's a battle to work out your own salvation, with fear and trembling. It's a battle. It really is. And we need a savior. And only God can do it. Only God can save us. We can't save ourselves. The devil, the world, sin, it's all too powerful. We can't beat it. But God can beat it. And God has beat it. And we need to just tap into him. Anyways, guys, I'm going to end it there. It's just been a little podcast of current events. Appreciate you listening if you listen this far. God bless you. Take care.